Hi everybody, this is Gingeronymous, one of Les's daughters, the one that's been doing the videos, and I realized that it's been about a week since Dad made a video, and I wanted to explain what's been happening. As he mentioned in some of his recent videos, he has been short of breath, and we're not too worried about it because he's had it for years, and it's an age-related thing. When you get older, your heart doesn't pump as fast, and fluid builds up in the lung area. And he's been taking medication for that, but he needed to have the dosage changed, so that's been done recently. And he's doing a lot better now. He's actually doing pretty good, but he's not quite ready to start doing the videos yet. So I thought he will be ready, you know, in maybe a couple of days or so. But in the meantime, I went and looked through a lot of videos that I had already, and I found a really interesting one of an interview I did of him in 2002 when he was 90 years old. So I'm going to put some clips from that on here, and this is really interesting because he's going into a lot more detail in it than he's been going into on these videos now. And also there's been a big change in his appearance. It doesn't sound like a long time, 4 years, but I guess when you go from 90 to 94, it can be quite a difference. And mainly because he's lost about 30 pounds in that amount of time. So he's been living with me about 6 years, and I never noticed, you know, because he was changing gradually, I didn't really notice the difference over that gradual amount of time. But I was really surprised when I saw these videos of how different he looks. In 30 years, I mean 30 pounds can really make a big difference. So there's that difference, and then also he has a lot more energy in this interview video. And so anyway, I'm going to play some clips from that, and before I play those, I'm going to also play a video that I took of him actually last week. It was really recent, of him watching himself on YouTube. I got him some speakers to go on the laptop, so it makes a really nice little audio-visual setup for him, and he loves to watch himself on YouTube. He really loves it, and I love to watch him watch himself on YouTube. I get such a big kick out of it. So anyway, I think you'll get a kick out of it too, and that's what I'm going to play.
Two guys come to the table and ask for some ID from me. This guy in an officer's uniform sitting at a table eating their breakfast, and he had his insignia on wrong. There I am, heading out for the 13th Air Force. Oh boy, was it hot out there. I learned early on in the military to overcome your frustrations, my first one being failure to gain appointment to West Point after a year of enlisted service. I was eliminated due to the physical examination. I was way underweight, and I had untaken care of dental problems. No waivers allowed. And but they did like me because I had a year of college under my belt, and I advanced from one job to another: company clerk, supply sergeant, regimental clerk, regimental court-martial clerk, and so on. And I soon learned it was impressed on me, you give it your best, no matter what circumstances you find yourself in, and it pays. It pays because you feel good yourself about what you're doing, and you gain recognition. And that I think really stood me in good stead. Give it your best, whatever you're doing. When I came back from a tour of duty in occupation Germany, brought my wife and 3 children back to the States, I had some sicknesses to overcome in my family. It took me a little while to gather them all together and to find a haven in my older sister's home out in Michigan. And I let them know in Washington I'd take whatever assignment they gave me, no arguments, and here's where to send my orders. My sister's home out in Michigan. And I found myself again on loan from my basic branch infantry to, this time, the Transportation Corps. And I was assigned to Camp Stoneman, California, which was a subpost to the San Francisco Port of Embarkation, headquartered at Fort Mason in San Francisco. There I was promptly assigned as commanding officer of the 15th Regiment. And when the announcement came out in a monthly bulletin from Washington that they needed officers of senior grade to serve as transport commanders, the Army still had its Army transport system. And we had a lot of ships sailing out of San Francisco, serving all of the ports out all over the Pacific. And too many of those transport commanders, being in lower grades like lieutenants and captains, were having great difficulties with senior officers who were their passengers on those voyages. And they wanted senior officers. I volunteered, and first thing you know, I'm a transport commander sailing out of San Francisco for 6 months. Then in April of 1950, the powers that be in Washington saw fit to disband the Army transport system and turn our ships over to naval-operated United Transport Service, Naval Transport Service. And here I am out of a job. And so I wrote a letter to Washington requesting relief from detail in the Transportation Corps and to revert to my basic branch infantry. And lo and behold, 2 orders came in, approving my request to go back to my basic branch infantry. And 2, the Korean War had just broken out, and I'm ordered to report to the commanding general of the Far East Command in the Korean War. And I'm all alone. I had no family with me, of course. I think I'm going into combat, which I didn't really look forward to. But I got sidetracked at Tokyo. And after 2 or 3 days of rather mysterious to me interviewing by a couple of generals, some obviously high-powered civilians, and so on, I find myself as a member of a top-secret group, senior advisors to the Japanese government to establish a new self-defense force. I learned why, when the North Koreans attempted to overrun South Korea and unify the entire country under communist rule, MacArthur sent all of his combat troops from the main islands of occupation Japan into Korea to combat that, leaving the Japanese mainlands absolutely defenseless. And here were the Russians up in the Kurils Islands, just north of Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan. They had only declared war against Japan approximately a week before the surrender on the Missouri. And they thought that would let them participate in the occupation of Japan. MacArthur kept them out with the approval of Harry Truman, our president. So here were these Russian troops, many of them, up in these Kurils Islands. What would stop them from making an end, just coming down and perforce, just moving troops in, perforce, becoming occupation heirs against a defeated enemy? MacArthur ordered Yoshida, Prime Minister of Japan, to establish some kind of a self-defense force to be trained American style. Initially a troop of 75,000, which eventually, after a rush training program, would become 4 infantry divisions with supporting artillery and so on and so forth. And I was part of the senior staff. My job was at the Japanese government level, where the military meets the civilian. And I was to teach the whole principle of civilian control over the military. Don't ever let the military get the bit in their teeth again and run away with government policy like Tojo had done in the former Japanese government, with the helpless emperor tacitly giving approval to whatever he did.